Hello everyone, I want to welcome you and thank you greatly for joining me in my second video on this topic, programming, indoctrination, and brain dirtying. Brainwashing, it's commonly known as, but brain dirtying is much more fitting. So, like in the last video, I'm going to read you a story from Politically Correct Bedtime Stories, Modern Tales for Our Lives and Times. And this is by James Finn Gardner. Unlike the other video, though, I'm going to switch it up a little bit and do the story at the end. So, like I said, this is the second video I've made on this topic. I think that you could still enjoy and get something out of this video, even if you have not seen the first one, but there is another one out there that you may want to check out. So, some bullet points on programming and indoctrination and brain dirtying. The Cinderella syndrome is something that is very common and I think affects us all pretty deeply. I know I've mostly heard about its effect on women, and surely something that's disturbing to me. But I do think that men are not excluded from this programming. I think that they have been included in it, and they have picked up some programming and indoctrination from these things too. So for those of you who don't know, I'm going to try and explain what the Cinderella syndrome is. I may not do a very good job of it, so I encourage you to do a little research and look it up and see what other people have said too, what you can find. Cinderella syndrome is a distortion of reality and the way things are in interpersonal relationships between men and women and life itself. We're very vulnerable and very impressionable when we are young children. And the Cinderella syndrome is dealing with fairy tales and with movies that have been made in from fairy tales and Disney and stories and things like that, and how they've affected us and programmed our thinking paradigm. So the most general way to describe the Cinderella syndrome is to say that in fairy tales there are some commonalities that occur. There's generally a woman in distress who is saved by a knight or a prince, or someone in high social status and who lives happily ever after with no effort, and that this programs girls to believe that that's a reality of life and that that's the way things are, and encourages codependency, codependent relationships, discourages independence and self-sufficiency, discourages women from learning how to take care of themselves and to make themselves happy, and instead it programs into women's minds when they are girls that everything will eventually be okay because some wonderful man will come along and make it all better. So most people can see how this is destructive for our culture and for individuals. I don't believe that's all that there is to the Cinderella syndrome or to the fairy tale indoctrination by any means. There are a lot more there's a lot more silliness programmed in through fairy tales. and these Disney movies and things of that nature. I'm not trying to just pick on Disney, other networks as well. But the indoctrination we get from childhood entertainment in the forms of fairy tales and these sorts of things. So I'm not going to try and explain too much of that because I think that the book is really more of a demonstration. It might do a better job of explaining these things to you than I can. I hope so. Going to move on to the next bullet point that I have down here, and that is being programmed to have fear of nature, to be afraid of nature, and to avoid nature. Although there are a lot of recluses, people who, I think that's what it's called, but people who are afraid to go out of their houses, I'm talking really mostly about the general population and how they've been affected with programming. So you may not be afraid to walk outside or walk out in nature even, but you may. I know a lot of people who think of the woods and nature and whatnot as dirty and avoid it. Even if you consider yourself a nature lover or nature person and you go out into the woods and go for hikes and things, please stay tuned. This may or may not be relevant for you. But shoes. Being taught to wear shoes all the time is distracting. Not distracting, detaching. I apologize. It is a barrier that we are programmed to include in our lives and to use. Wearing shoes weakens your feet. If you do it all the time, you are not strengthening the muscles in your feet. Going barefoot in sand and dirt and grass, places where it's safe to do so, is very beneficial and useful for our health. There are chakra systems that will agree with me. The philosophies or science or whatever you want to call it about these ancient Eastern systems of health. There's the meridian system, the chakra system, all of these things that all tell that we have a lot going on in our feet, a lot of energy is stored in our feet, that we can absorb energy through our feet. Reflexology states that there's like a map of our entire bodies on our feet. From a Western scientific point of view, there are a lot of nerves and bones in our feet. So your feet are very sensitive. And in the same way that feeling something with your hands, smelling things, tasting things, seeing things, hearing things is a good thing to exercise and an indication of health, your feet and their connectivity to the natural environment are as well. Not only does the earth massage our feet naturally, and do all other species who are classified under the kingdom of Animalia walk around barefoot on the earth, we are not designed to be harmed by doing so. But we're often programmed from a very early age to wear our shoes outside, to be careful that we don't hurt our feet, make sure we're wearing our shoes, whether it's cold or warm or hot or cool, whether we're in grass or on pavement, to always wear our shoes. So, I'm not telling people to go walk in littered areas barefoot, but I am suggesting that there's programming there that keeps people in socks and shoes at times that to me look very silly and look like it looks like missed opportunities to me to absorb some health from the earth. Just like clean oxygen gives you health, the sunlight gives you health, being near water and negative ions gives you health. The ground itself has healing properties that you can absorb through your feet. So moving on from that, there are other ones, and I really hope I don't lose you here, but all the cosmetics and hygiene products that we buy, a lot of them are not necessary, a lot of them are harmful, a lot of them screw with our physiology, but we're programmed and taught to wear them, that we need to wear them, that we are not clean if we do not wear them. So I hope I don't lose anybody or turn anybody off right now, because I think this one is a hard barrier to break through for some people, but I'm speaking the truth as I see it. So I'm going to talk about your body odor for a moment and deodorant. We, like a lot of other animals, sweat and give off pheromones. These are important and they're pretty cool and special in my opinion. Pheromones are not only related to sex, contrary to what is indoctrinated into a lot of people. Pheromones do assist in attracting partners in a sexual sense who might be a good match for you, but they also assist in attracting people to you that can benefit you in a non-sexual way. Pheromones can, through the subconscious, attract to you people who can assist you, help you, you can learn from right now, who it would be beneficial to encounter. So, not only do we have deodorant out there covering up our pheromones, we have, as a society, we have in shampoos and conditioners pheromone blockers. We have a ton of perfumes on the market, and colognes and aftershaves and all kinds of things to mask our natural odor, our natural scent, pheromones, and to give off an artificial scent, or to mix with our scent if it happens to be all natural, if you're spritzing rose water on yourself or something. So I'm not trying to talk anyone out of wearing deodorant, okay? If you sense that you need it, I'm not trying to tell you to be a social outcast and to be uncomfortable and all that by boycotting deodorant if you need it to feel comfortable and whatnot. But I do want to share some things that I've found out. There's a lot of crazy things in deodorant, so if you're going to wear deodorant, please look into what those ingredients are, what those funny looking words that do not really look like words at all mean. Okay? Try to wear ones that don't block pheromones. Try to wear ones that are natural, that aren't loaded with chemicals, that are vegan. I have noticed, however, that since I've become vegan and the healthier, probably not at first, but since I started eating healthier on my vegan diet, I have found less need for deodorants. And I have friends and colleagues and people who will back me up on this. Um, the healthier your diet is, usually the less repulsive odor you're going to have and sweat under your arms. Now, this is not based on logic or anything, no statistics or data. This is just a personal hypothesis I have, or hunch, feeling, idea. Okay. I am not sure, but of the effects that deodorant has on you long term. I have no reason to believe that by applying deodorant, you are not entering into a cycle of dependency on this deodorant. In other words, I have no reason to believe that we don't start putting on deodorant when we don't really need it, either before we start developing a scent, which wouldn't be offensive anyway if it was culturally accepted and people were healthy. But before we start putting on the scent, giving it off, or from eating unhealthy and the detoxing that occurs through our sweat glands there. By putting the deodorant on, we may be setting ourselves up for more stink. In other words, the deodorant might temporarily mask the scent and help with our sweat, but long term initiate more stench and more sweat. There are a lot of things in life that are similar, that do similar things. I was told not too long ago by a doctor that using Q-tips in my ears actually promoted wax growth. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just suggesting that I have no reason to believe we don't have a similar situation with deodorants. So, that's deodorants. Perfumes. I have to tell you all that I used to smell perfumes, think they smelled good or think they smelled bad based on my personal preferences of the scent, I guess. But nowadays it smells really screwed up to me when I smell perfume or cologne. Even if I somewhat like the smell of it, like the idea of it, it smells chemically artificial and bad. So just like deodorant, it's important to look into what is in these things, what it's made out of. There's pheromone blockers or anything that's going to be damaging to your health, and hopefully you care about animals somewhat and the planet and the environment and the rest of us, and whether this is what you're putting on you is affecting that negatively. I really don't see how it's affecting us positively as a culture to be wearing all this strange stuff. Yes, it's a route to creative expression and self-expression in a sense, just like picking the colors of clothing we're going to wear, but it hardly seems worth it. Like I said, to me, they don't smell good anymore. In another video I mentioned, once I'd become vegan and been vegan for a while, that my senses really perked up, and it was like they woke up, or reawoke, or woke up more. And I account this to that, because same time frame. So, what else? Well, it's just that these ideas that I'm suggesting to you may or may not seem radical and absurd. The word hippie might come to mind. We've all been taught from an early enough age that this is the appropriate thing to do, that this affects our social status, which is very important to us, even if it's not on a conscious level or we think it's not on a subconscious level. It is very important to us. It's important to our survival instincts. And we're taught that. And this is indoctrination. This is cultural programming, and the media is involved in it too. But it is programming. It's brain dirtying. It's brain dirtying when it's something that negatively affects you or that stops you from expanding and fulfilling a potential that holds you back. So these things cost a lot of money. When you think of everything that you could buy hygiene-wise and that you're taught that you needed, I'm just suggesting that really don't need all of it. I rarely use face wash. I have some vegan face wash I do use every once in a while, but I rarely use it now, whereas I used to wash my face every day thinking that I needed to. Now I wash it with that stuff when it feels like I need some oil taken off it. And this is because I still consume oil to some extent, I believe. I'm not even going to go into makeup, but I'm going to say that not only is this an issue of our health and our pheromones being blocked, it's also an issue that deals with our confidence. It affects our self-confidence and our sense of self-worth. I believe that we all are born with a natural intelligence. We all realize that we have commonalities to animals on the planet and to other humans, and we are programmed to believe that we are very different, that something is wrong with us if we don't have all of these things. Trying to leave jewelry and makeup out, but that does come to mind. Moisturizing cream for our feet, aging cream when we get to a certain age, or anti-aging cream, acne medications, creams and whatnot. When acne comes about from a dietary imbalance, it comes from eating the wrong things. But we're taught that if we don't have, that something's wrong with us because we have acne, which it is. It's a health symptom. It's signaling to you something's not right here. We're doing something wrong. But we're taught that we smell bad. Our natural scent is bad. It's disgusting. We repulse people. We need to cover it up. And that's twisted. It's bad for our self-esteem and our self-image. And it's really not true. Where our systems are designed, they're intelligent. Their purpose with this is to attract people to us that are right for us to be around at the time. If you're smelling somebody's body odor and it smells repulsive to you, that probably means that you're not going to get anything beneficial out of being around that person. I don't know, because our society is trained to think that any body odor smells disgusting. But if you are outside of that loop a little bit and you have ever smelled your partner or someone that you found attractive when they'd been exercising or whatnot, and they had a natural smell to them, their pheromones, or their scent. I don't want to say odor because it sounds negative, but if you've ever smelled that and thought that it smelled somewhat good, that is because your body, your physiology is telling you that this person has something to offer you, that being around them is going to be pleasant. It's going to smell pleasant. You're attracted to them, to collaborating with them in one way or another, or whatnot have you. So big issues around this. Really, it really is something that I hope people will think about. Some moving on from that, there are a couple more bullet points I wanted to get on to. What we consider food is a really big one. Food is a very personal thing, and it is really food. Eating food is the most intimate thing we do. Sex is not the most intimate thing we do. Eating food is actually the most intimate thing that we do. Because when we eat food, we are actually experiencing a form of alchemy. That is, we have an apple or whatever we are eating, and we take it into us, and it becomes one with us, and we become one with it. Okay? So we have transformed this apple into ourselves, and we've achieved some alchemy. It's a very intimate thing. You can't get more intimate than by becoming one with something or someone, literally. So it's the most intimate thing we do. Therefore, our emotions about it, I'm going to stick with emotions. Our emotions about it are very sensitive and very deep oftentimes. And oftentimes complicated because of the society we live in, and because of programming and indoctrination, and brain dirtying, and whatnot there. By being told that we are omnivores, which in the United States happens pretty frequently, we are not only being given false information because our bodies are not omnivorous by scientific classification. We are encouraged to eat anything and everything because that is what omnivore really translates into, is a being that eats everything. It's not a carnivore who eats meat mainly, or raw meat, or an herbivore, a ruminant, or herbivore who eats grasses and things like that. An omnivore, like a pig, for instance, can eat eggs, can eat vegetables, can eat things that we as humans think of as disgusting. So we have it programmed into our head, a lot of us, that we are omnivores. This allows us to be desensitized enough to feed ourselves all of these chemicals and dyes and things that we intellectually realize are toxic, that are poisonous, things that we find gross, things that we find immoral. We're even praised for it. In a lot of situations, people are praised for it. Oh, they're not a picky eater, they'll eat anything. Oh, that's easy. So you're with the nature's like triad of pleasure triad, or whatever it's called. I apologize. This is out of the pleasure trap, and I'm just having a moment here. But it's like a compliment because we're saying we're not taking up much of the other person's energy, which energy conservation, pleasure, and pain avoidance are the points on this triangle, this triad. And that's the basic seeking for well-being. But once you introduce artificial things and twist things, it gets a little weird and complicated, and there are traps or tricks, and that is what the book The Pleasure Trap, is about. In our cells, we have programming, natural programming, to go for pleasurable things, because pleasurable things in nature increase our health and well-being and our vibrations and our happiness, which spreads to others. Okay. For the most part, I was talking about food and being omnivores. So this is really horrible and devastating. It's killing everything. It's not funny. It's just overwhelming to me. On an individual level, it's wreaking havoc with person's health, physical health, with people's individual personal health, but it's destroying the planet massively, quickly. I think we've been programmed to ignore the word destroying at this point, but it's serious. So, yes. Also, there's Carnism. Carnism is a word I believe Melanie Joy coined. If you want to look into her and her stuff, she is a brilliant Harvard graduate, PhD. We are programmed to find it normal and natural to eat certain animals and not others. We are taught to eat certain animals and to think of them as food, and to think of other animals in different ways, depending on where in the world we live, generally speaking. There's no logic in why somebody would eat a cow and not a dog, or eat a snake and not a cow, or however you want to make a combination. There's no logic in it saying eat this animal, don't eat this animal, this one's healthier for you, it's more moral to eat this one than this one. No logic whatsoever. That is all brain dirtying, cultural programming, indoctrination on a very deep level. Remember, food is the thing that we're most intimate with. And to even further up that intimacy, unlike snakes and many reptiles who go out and fend for themselves, we have a bonding relationship between our parents, where we came from and where we generally receive love from, the most love from, first. They feed us. So that increases the intimacy too. Very important. The last little bullet point is I wanted to talk a little bit about isms throughout history and the programming of that. So my observations from living in the United States, where I have, are that now in 2014, by the Gregorian calendar, almost all people think that racism is morally unacceptable. So as well as racism, there has been classism, there's been sexism, there's been numerous other isms. And these may still exist here to an extent. Women may be treated unfairly in certain situations, just paid less for the same job as a man, as an example. But during certain historical periods, they were far more enhanced, and these these suppressed people were treated very much more unfairly, and the ism was stronger. Homosexuality, these isms in the past, in the history, when they were the norm, the culturally accepted norm, it was just what people did. They were programmed to believe this was the way to live. They were brain dirtied. They were indoctrinated to believe that this was the way to live. There's speciesism, and in this day and age, it's here, it's real, it exists. It is the culturally accepted norm. It is because of indoctrination, brain dirtying, programming. It's not in anyone's best interest. Moving on to my wrap up. I want to encourage people and suggest people do their best to question what you don't understand. Question the official stories, the things that are just accepted. Open your minds. This may be scary for some people. It seems scary to me from an outside perspective looking at it, that it would be scary for some people to realize that they have been on the planet for X amount of years, and this strange thing that could be a fundamental truth they don't know about. They don't know if it's true or not, or they have been believing a lie for all of these years and living their life that way. That can be scary, but I want to really encourage people to open their minds and to try and face that fear. You're better off. And do research, learn. Want to learn, do research. That goes right with the first thing I said, with question what you don't understand. Ask questions if you don't understand something. If it doesn't make sense to you, ask. Don't just accept it because somebody tells you it, somebody in authority. That's a big part of how programming and this indoctrination occurs, is because people just take people's words for it when they have certain titles, certain authorities. Okay. So the mission is to decipher your inner knowing and wisdom from taught beliefs. You keep your mind open, you ask questions, you research, you learn, you have an inner knowing that's been buried under indoctrination and programming and all of these things. But on a cellular level, there's something there, and people's I'm getting into ground. I don't know how to say this. Just try to open your minds and listen to yourself and not be rigid. And clingy to what you've been taught. Ask yourself, do I know that to be true really? Do I really know that to be true? Do I know it in my bones? Do I know it in my cells? Do I know it in my heart? Does that make sense to me in my mind? If I'm quiet and I meditate for a while and whatnot, does that feel like a fundamental truth? Do I feel that as a truth in my core? Or is it something that was taught to me that I believed because it makes sense to believe it when the majority of other people are believing it, perhaps? Or perhaps for another reason, because there are tons and tons of reasons, tons and tons of ways that we get tricked. Okay, long video. Sorry, glad I got that out. Going to read you a story now. The Frog Prince. Once there was a young princess who, when she grew tired of beating her head against the male power structure at her castle, would relax by walking into the woods and sitting beside a small pond. There she would amuse herself by tossing her favorite golden ball up and down and pondering the role of the eco-feminist warrior in her era. One day, while she was envisioning the utopia that her queendom could become if women were in the positions of power, she dropped the ball, which rolled into the pond. The pond was so deep and murky, she couldn't see where it had gone. She didn't cry, of course, but she made a mental note to be more careful next time. Suddenly she heard a voice say, "I can get your ball for you, princess." She looked around and saw the head of a frog popping above the surface of the pond. "No," she said. "I would never enslave a member of another species to work for my selfish desires." The frog said, "Well, what if we make a deal on a contingency basis? I'll get your ball for you if you do me a favor in return." The princess gladly agreed to the most equitable arrangement. The frog dived under the water and soon emerged with the golden ball in his mouth. He spit the ball on the shore and said, "Now that I've done you a favor, I'd like to explore your views on physical attraction between the species." The princess couldn't imagine what the frog was talking about. The frog continued, "You see, I am not really a frog at all. I'm really a man, but an evil sorcerer has cast a spell on me. While my frog form is no better or worse, only different, than my human form, I would so much like to be among people again. And the only thing that can break this spell is a kiss from a princess." The princess thought for a moment about whether sexual harassment could take place between species, but her heart went out to the frog for his predicament. She bent down and kissed the frog on the forehead. Instantly the frog grew and changed, and there, standing in the water where the frog had been, was a man in a golf shirt and loud plaid pants, middle-aged, vertically challenged, and losing a little bit of hair on the top. The princess was taken aback. "I'm sorry if this sounds a little classist," she stammered, "but what I mean to say is, don't sorcerers usually cast their spells on princes?" "Ordinarily, yes," he said, "but this time the target was just an innocent businessman. You see, I'm a real estate developer, and the sorcerer thought I was cheating him in property line dispute. So he invited me out for a round of golf, and just as I was about to tee off, he transformed me. But my time as a frog wasn't wasted, you know. I've gotten to know every square inch of these woods, and I think it would be ideal for an office park, condo, resort complex. The location's great, and the numbers crunch perfectly. The bank wouldn't lend any money to a frog, but now that I'm human, in form again, they'll be eating out of my hand. Oh, will that be sweet? And let me tell you, this is going to be a big project. Just drain the pond, cut down about 80% of the trees, get estimates for..." The frog developer was cut short when the princess shoved her golden ball back into his mouth. She then pushed him back underwater and held him there until he stopped thrashing. As she walked back to the castle, she marveled at the number of good deeds that a person could do in just one morning. And while someone might have noticed that the frog was gone, no one ever missed the real estate developer. The end. Now, just for the sake of propriety and being safe here, I did not read you that story because I am advocating violence or murder, okay? I read you that story because it is a cool story out of a cool book. And this book is Politically Correct Bedtime Stories, Modern Tales for Our Lives and Times by James Finn Gardner. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Be well.